morning, everyone. Almost good afternoon. Welcome. Oh, it's so lovely to see you all. It's Mary Magdalene feast day today, which is really beautiful. And there's a lot of resource around Mary Magdalene inside the Bhakti Club portal. So for those of you who are newer, we've had an influx of new people. Definitely go back and listen to those, because there's a beautiful interview that I do with my dear friend Eloise Harridance, who's really into the Mary Magdalene teachings. And there's also a book club session around a book called Mary Magdalene Revealed, which, even if you haven't read the book, again, you'll still get a lot from the book club. So yeah, definitely recommend those sessions as good replay listening, especially today, because it is her feast day, which is a very auspicious day for us to be focusing on the goddess. And I feel like I was just kind of having a little chuckle at myself before we started, because I'm extremely well set up for this session. I've got my hot water bottle on my womb, which you can't see, but that's happening because it's kind of cold and wintry. I've got my chai, my perimenopause recipe chai. And I've also went and picked this morning, especially for us, for all of us, some Tulsi. So if you had a chance to listen to the podcast that I recommended that sort of goes with this session, I mean, I won't be referencing it in detail, but I really recommend that podcast as a accompaniment to this session. And it's interesting because it's a male, which, I always think, oh, a man talking about the goddess, what's he gonna know? But actually, he just speaks about it. It like truly is the sacred masculine. Like the way that he speaks about the goddess, it gives me hope. Honestly, it gives me hope. I'm in a cynical moment about men at the moment in my life in general, which is another conversation for another time. But when I hear a man like that speak about the goddess, I can't really hate men too much. So that's a good thing. Let me see if I can get the Tulsi into the picture so we can be reminded as we're listening. So Tulsi is the plant of the goddess. In fact, in some traditions in India, they actually believe it's holy basil. So it's sort of like a form of basil. In some traditions, they believe that Tulsi, which grows really well in Australia, by the way, like it just, if you put a little stick of it, you can snap a bit off like I have here, put it in water, it will start to grow roots just only in water, and then you can stick it in the ground and it will grow. It's like prolific and so easy. And it's in India, I mean, you can drink the tea, the infusion, but it's also seen as a really sacred plant. In fact, in the 1960s, 1970s, when Srila Prabhupada, who is the guru that founded the Hare Krishna movement, when he was building temples all over the world, the Hare Krishna movement kind of exploded very quickly after he came to the West, and he got lots of young Western kind of hippie devotees on board with his movement. And it's such a beautiful and inspiring story about how all of that happened. But they were building a temple in India. I forget where, someone might know, and if you know, you can let me know. But they were building this temple, and the layout of the temple was such, there was a Tulsi tree that was going to basically be in the way of where their plans were for building. And so the devotees were like, oh, it's just a small tree, we'll cut it down, it doesn't matter. And just before they were about to do this, Srila Prabhupada, the guru, said, if you cut down a Tulsi tree to build a temple, you're basically eliminating the goddess. Like, this would be a big mistake. You don't build a temple on on ground that where a Tulsi tree has been destroyed and cut down. So instead, what happened is they built the temple around the tree and literally decorated it and nurtured it and would walk around it and say prayers. And the Tulsi tree became celebrated as an embodiment of the goddess. And I love this because in the Krishna teachings, you really can take almost any item and turn it into a way of worship or a way of remembering Krishna, the goddess, the divine. The name is not important. So a rock, a river, a Tulsi tree, a single sunflower, a human child, it really doesn't matter. The point is, it's kind of that idea of beauty is in the eye of the beholder. We decide to see the divinity. We decide to see the goddess. And this is so different to Western thinking, where in our Western minds, it's like, show me the evidence, like, okay, if this plant is holy, if this plant is the goddess, prove it to me. Let it do something magical. Why is it special? And part of that is because of the way that we've been educated. Like, our schooling system is very much about having a hypothesis, proving the hypothesis. It's kind of empirical science. Like, it makes a lot of sense. And there's a need for that in certain areas of consciousness and, the way that we think as human beings. It's not that that's all wrong, but we can definitely go too far with that, where we lose the magic and we lose the remembering that we get to actually choose how we see things. We get to choose. And this is a teaching that my teacher Sharon Gannon time and time and time again shared with me, or shares with us, with her students. You get to choose how you view the world. You get to choose how you view your partner, your parents, your children, your housemates, your colleagues, your neighbors. And she says, this is the teaching that comes very much from Jivamukti Yoga. When we're truly enlightened, we don't even see those other beings as separate from us. We literally know that we are all part of the same consciousness. There is no separation. There is no difference between us. However, most of us have the conditioning, and we're not yet enlightened, that we do see ourselves as being in separate form. I am separate to you. I'm separate to my child. I'm separate to my mother, etc., etc. And the teaching states that while you still see others, until you see oneness only, see them as holy beings. See them literally as a saint. Now, I know that might sound ridiculous. Like, how are you going to see your grumpy old next door neighbor that's always swearing at his dog, as a hypothetical example, as a holy being? But truly, it's the practice. This is the practice of the goddess, that we look for the beauty. I'm reading a book at the moment. I can't remember what it's called, but I'll pop it in the notes if anyone's interested. I feel like maybe you won't be interested because it's pretty niche and weird. I love these, even though I'm not a practicing Christian and I'm not really a very traditional, I've never been a sort of traditional housewife type. But I really like some of the Christian writings around homemaking. Like, for me personally, I have to filter a lot of it out because there's a lot of, like, for example, homophobia, just kind of very traditional patriarchal role modeling. Like, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you just kind of got to go, no, that's not for me. But the idea that homemaking could be a service to God and that raising children could be a devotional practice, I really love that. And I feel like some of the Christian writers really nailed that, particularly in the 40s and the 50s. After the Second World War. Yeah, these days it's hashtag tradwife. I've seen that trending. After the Second World War, when there was a lot of austerity and a lot of PTSD, it didn't even have a name at the time, but that's what was actually going on. And so leaning into these practices of making food, growing a garden, homemaking, raising children in a very humble way. There's something very beautiful and wholesome about that I enjoy. Anyway, this book I'm reading at the moment, the woman who's writing it, and I will pop it in the notes if you are interested, she's speaking about her grandmother. And she's saying that her grandmother, even though they were very, very austere, like they were poor, they did not have much money, they didn't really have enough to feed themselves. Every Sunday after church, her grandmother would open up her home and feed as many people as she possibly could. And they'd come and they'd have, tea and bread and soup and just very humble offering, but there was food made available. And she was saying that the way that her grandmother approached this, so often they would have people that would come that would be homeless or, might even be, using drugs or like dirty and smelly and just kind of like unsavory characters. And back then there would have been a lot more social judgment around that, perhaps. Like these days, maybe we're a little bit more compassionate in our, the way that we think about that type of thing. But her grandmother would always welcome everyone with open arms. And this was the line that I loved. She said, her grandmother said, "You just don't know which person is an angel in disguise." So anyone that comes into your home, anyone that comes into your life, any difficult person, any repellent person, could be an angel in disguise. And this is the teaching of the goddess, that we get to choose to see the world in that way, rather than waiting to be shown evidence. And that's my big invitation for you today, that you are able to, or at least curious to, expand your mind a little and see what becomes available to you when you let go of the cynical, show me the evidence voice that many of us have grown up with. So with that said, what I would love to do today is guide you through a visualization practice around the goddess. And then we're going to dive into some journaling. I've got 3 kind of quite in-depth, juicy prompts for you. And then we'll see if there's some time for sharing at the end. That would be beautiful as well. So get yourself set up. You'll definitely need a notebook and a pen. I much prefer writing to typing, but if you want to type, that's okay too. But there's something about, in fact, there's actually lots of studies that have shown that when you actually write the words, you have a different type of consciousness to typing. So that would be my invitation. But for now, you just need to be comfortable, warm. Feel free to sit. If you're going to sit, you need to be nice and upright, tall spine, heart open, or lie down and rest. If you need a glass of water, if you need to pee, if you're cold, you need an extra layer, attend to those things now. So just take inventory of where your body is at and what you're going to need to be able to be comfortable for the next 20 minutes or so. And get yourself set up. And once you're ready, gently close down your eyes, either seated or reclining. Take a few deep breaths, calming breaths. And with each exhale, release any tension that you're holding in your body. With each exhale, release any tension that you're holding in your body. Imagine yourself walking in a lush, vibrant forest. Imagine yourself walking in a lush, vibrant forest. The air is fresh and filled with the gentle sounds of nature. The sun filters through the leaves, casting a warm golden light all around you. The sun filters through the leaves, casting a warm golden light all around you. As you walk, you feel the earth beneath your feet, supporting and nurturing you. In the heart of the forest, you come upon a clearing bathed in soft, radiant light. Here, in this sacred space, you sense the presence of the divine feminine. Here, in this sacred space, you sense the presence of the divine feminine. This presence is formless yet palpable, enveloping you in a feeling of unconditional love and acceptance. Allow yourself to bask in this loving energy, feeling it wash over you like a gentle wave. This is the essence of the goddess in all her many forms, nurturing, creative, infinitely wise. She exists within and all around you, connecting all living beings in a web of compassion and understanding. Visualize this divine energy as a warm, glowing light begins to fill you from within. With each breath, this light grows brighter, illuminating every part of you. It heals, nurtures, and empowers you, awakening your own inner strength and intuition. As you continue to breathe deeply, reflect on the qualities of the divine feminine that you wish to embody in your own life. Reflect on the qualities of the divine feminine that you wish to embody in your own life. Perhaps it's the ability to nurture and care for others, or the courage to follow your intuition, or the creativity to bring new ideas into the world. Whatever the qualities you choose, imagine them taking root within you like little seedlings, nurtured by the light of the goddess. Imagine the qualities that you choose taking root within you like little seedlings, nurtured by the light of the goddess. And as you continue to sit in this beautiful clearing, in this sacred forest, surrounded by the sounds of nature, supported by the earth beneath you, Become open to the possibility that you may see a specific form of the feminine divine, a specific embodiment of the goddess. You may feel more of a general energy or vibration, but give yourself a few moments now to drop into the form of the goddess that arises on the screen of your imagination. Dropping into the form of the goddess that arises on the screen of your imagination. Spend a few more moments in this space, feeling supported and uplifted by boundless love. Know that you can return to this space anytime you need guidance, healing, or inspiration. When you're ready, gently begin to bring your awareness back to the present moment. Take a few deep breaths, feeling grounded and refreshed. Move your fingers and your toes, and when you feel ready, open your eyes. And we're going to stay in that quiet, reflective space, feeling the energy and the qualities of the goddess as we move straight into journaling. In your first prompt, I invite you to write about a moment when you felt deeply connected to the nurturing, intuitive, or creative aspects of yourself. And describe particularly how this felt in your body and in your emotions. I'm going to pop it in the chat and I'll say it again. Write about a moment when you felt deeply connected to the nurturing, intuitive, or creative aspects of yourself. Describe how it felt in your body and emotions. And now I want to invite you to go a little deeper. Sometimes when we're journaling, it's easy to kind of have an instant or obvious response. And what I've noticed in my own journaling practice is my greatest insights, my greatest awareness often arises when I go a little beneath or a layer below the initial response. So, a moment when you felt deeply connected to the nurturing, intuitive, or creative aspects of yourself. How did it feel in your body, and how did it feel emotionally? And feel free to continue if this prompt is still speaking to you. Our second prompt today, second of three. Choose a goddess figure from any culture or mythology that resonates with you. Journal about why this particular goddess speaks to you and consider how you can embody her strengths and wisdom in your daily life. So I love this prompt because what we're being asked to do here is take aspirational qualities and aspects that might seem quite far away from how we are and how we live and draw them into our own daily lives. So, for example, if you really appreciate or are inspired by the vibration or the feeling of gracefulness, how can you bring the embodiment of gracefulness into your words, into your interactions, into your daily life? And that might be associated to a particular representation of the goddess, or it might not. And remember, please be as expansive as possible in your thinking. The goddess can come in many forms, including human forms. So it might be an inspirational figure. It doesn't necessarily, it might be in human form as well as in mythological form. Perhaps there is someone in your life, or there has been someone in your life that is a beautiful embodiment of the divine feminine. How wonderful to have that embodied example. Choose a goddess figure from any culture or mythology that resonates with you. Journal about why this particular goddess speaks to you and consider how you can embody her strengths and wisdom in your daily life. And then our final prompt for today, and of course, this practice is always to be continued. We can always come back and reflect further. Reflect on the energy of the goddess in nature, nurturing the earth, the moon's cycles, the creative burst of a blossoming flower. Journal about how you can deepen your connection to these energies in your everyday life. And I know that some of you, like me, live in a more urban environment. Others of you live closer to the earth, which is so beautiful. But regardless of where you live and how you live, there are always ways that we can observe and notice the cycles of nature around us. Like this morning, as I was doing the school run, dropping the kids at school, I was really noticing, because I knew I wanted to pick Tulsi, and I know where there's a beautiful big Tulsi bush on a nature verge near our house, but I was really noticing what's happening. It's winter, so there's not a lot of flowers around, but the magnolia are just starting, like the buds are just starting to open. I was looking at a big hydrangea bush that I know will be in full bloom soon, where again the shoots and the leaves are just starting to open up. It's really beautiful. Very, very beginnings of the change of season that will be coming. Reflect on the energy of the goddess in nature, nurturing earth, the moon's cycles, the creative burst of a blooming flower. Journal about how you can deepen your connection to these energies in your everyday life. Okay, so just bringing that journaling practice to a close for now. As I said, to be continued. Yeah, I saw that, Shondell. I saw you taking us on a little nature walk then. Thank you. I noticed actually the magnolias blooming further north. Like my friend lives in Byron, and she's just done some beautiful photographs of magnolia in bloom, but we're not quite there yet in Sydney. So I had one little last story I wanted to share with you from my own life, and then I'd love to open up and hear from you guys. When I was thinking about this third prompt for myself, I remembered my great auntie, who was my grandfather's sister. And the story of her life is so incredible. She was a single woman for most of her life. And some of this story I know because she told me, but I was quite young. She passed away when I was 17, but I was quite close with her. And some of the story I know because my mother's told me, she's kind of filled in the gaps. But basically, my auntie worked for the tax office. She had a administrative job working for the tax office, and she was in love with her boss for her entire life. This is not relevant to the story I'm going to tell you in a minute, but I just can't talk about her without telling you this background story because it's so incredible. So for 25 years, she worked for this man. His name was Jack Holden in the tax office doing admin. Like, I think she was maybe his secretary or his assistant or whatever, and never told him that she was in love with him because he was married. Now, he never had children, but he was married for the duration of that time. I don't know if he got married after he knew my auntie or before or whatever. Anyway, she didn't say a word for 25 years, but didn't marry herself or get in a relationship herself. She was just in this deep love for this man. And after 25 years, they were still working together. His wife passed away, and she was very much part of supporting him through his grief and also just, being able to manage his life without a wife, imagining all the things that wives did back then that men needed help with. And long story short, and there's lots of ins and outs of this, but they ended up getting married. And they went on a cruise after they got married for their honeymoon. And I've got some pictures of them on this cruise, and it's just the most incredible thing. It's sort of a little bit later on than Titanic, but Titanic-esque kind of vibes. And she was just overjoyed with delight every time she spoke about him. And then later on, like not that soon after they got married, actually, he went blind and he needed a lot of care. And she was his carer up until he died. So I think they had 7 or 8 years together before he passed away. So anyway, that's an irrelevant background story, but a beautiful story that's tinged with, great joy, but also great sadness, like so many stories. And I often think that their story would make an incredible novel or movie, or it's very, very, very beautiful. When she was working for the tax office and a single woman, she created a scrapbook, like a sort of notebook with different things stuck in it, that was, it was essentially her vision board, right? It was, these days we do vision boarding. This was her vision board. It was her plan of how she would run a household if she ever got married and had children. Now, she ended up not having children because it was too late. By the time his wife passed away and they got married, she would have been in her 50s, I think. And he was older than her too. He was a good 10 years older than her. But anyway, I have this scrapbook and I've looked at it many times over the years, but the other day I opened it up again and I looked at it again. And one thing I hadn't noticed in it, it's so moving. It moves me to tears every time I look at it. She's got pictures cut out from magazines of like, different settings in the home. And then all these kind of strange things like how to polish silver, how to clean leather gloves, what to serve with fish when it's springtime and you've got people coming over for dinner, like these sort of clippings from a newspaper that she's like put together, and then all her little handwritten notes all around them. And the scrapbook, I noticed the other day when I got it out, is from 1943 because she dates everything. She's very meticulous. So it's kind of falling apart now, but it's, obviously just one of my most precious possessions. And she, the beautiful thing about it is she didn't get the children, but she did get the man. So she kind of manifested, from these 25 years. That's a long time to have something on your vision board. But the point I wanted to make is I thought of her with this third prompt, journaling about how you can deepen your connection to nature, because one of the things she has in her scrapbook is different flower arrangements from her garden that she made according to different seasons. So in spring, she writes about the crocuses and the daffodils and the snowdrops. And then in winter, she writes about mistletoe and holly. Obviously, it's in England. And she's very meticulous too. She obviously had a lot more time on her hands than I do. She didn't have children. So she even wrote like which vase she used for which arrangements and what seasons they were available. So beautiful, so moving. And yeah, Chandel's right. Eye for details, the accountants. So I wanted to share that with you because I feel like stories like that. I mean, we talk sometimes in Ayurveda and yoga about this idea of tarpana, and tarpana is honoring the ancestors. And she's an ancestor of mine that I feel great admiration for. She was so fun. Whenever as a child we used to go and visit her, she smoked like a chimney and she was always dressed up completely over the top. Like she'd be wearing a ball gown, to go to the supermarket on a Tuesday afternoon. She was very dramatic in her presence. But such a romantic, such a romantic. I will take some photos of, I'll share some photos of her and I'll share some photos of the book. I will do that definitely. It's so funny. I've been watching this TV series recently and I cannot even remember what it's called. It's like an old 1990s British, it's a bit soap opera. It's like a crime drama, but it's pretty low grade. I just like it. It's quite relaxing. But anyway, the point I've noticed that the way they talk to each other, it's only the 90s, is so much more direct and blunt than we do now. Like we've become, and some of it's good. I'm not saying this is all a bad thing. Like it's nice, it's beautiful that we've become more sensitive and more nuanced and more inclusive in our language. However, I think also it's sometimes at the cost of, I don't know, like humor can be lost, and also just say what you mean and mean what you say can be lost. It's like there's nothing wrong with being straight up. And I think the flip side to that, which is something I really try to remember myself, because I can be pretty blunt, is I really enjoy direct feedback. Like it's so relaxing to me to know that someone's going to tell me I do like this, I don't like that. Like it's just like kids are a great mirror for that, Like if I make my teenagers some kind of food and they love it, I'll know they love it. And if they don't love it, I'll also know that. But it's kind of relaxing when people just are direct and tell you what they really think. And it really, yeah, it saves a lot of energy being drained. So I love that reflection. And I think there's a beautiful middle ground where we can be, you use the word edgy, I think like really authentic and honest, but still kind, you know. Um, I'll tell you a very funny story that's sort of related to this, and it was so terrible, but also hilarious. So in the school holidays that have just gone by, my 8-year-old had a friend over for a play date, and this kid has never played at our house before. He's a really nice little boy, lovely parents, whatever. So he comes over, he's playing for a couple of hours, and then I drive him home. And at the end of the play date, I said to him as he was getting out the car, he's only 8, so I may have misjudged my audience a little bit. But I said to him, well, that was a terrible play date, and you were a really naughty boy, and you're never coming back. Obviously joking, right? Because he was delightful and it was perfect. And my kids know my sense of humor. They're just like roll their eyes and go, whatever, mum, yeah, ha ha. But this poor child obviously doesn't have parents that speak to him with a sarcastic British sense of humor. So he must have gone straight into the house and said to his parents what I said to him. And then half an hour later, I got a text message from his mother saying, I'm so sorry that he didn't behave well. Could you just give me some feedback about what he did wrong? Because he's a little bit confused so that we can talk to him and make sure it doesn't happen again. And I was mortified. I called her up. I was like, please. It was like the biggest joke because he's an angel. Poor child. That's going to be like a lasting childhood memory for him. Luckily, his mum did laugh. And I have seen him since and said, I'm sorry about my dreadful sense of humor. He'll probably never come back. So yeah, say what you mean what you say, but perhaps less sarcasm for me would be a good, especially with 8-year-olds. I'm going to be doing some teachings on Kali in September. I'm already starting to prep for them. So there's some big Kali teachings coming your way. And I've been looking at other goddesses that have a similar, because there's always these themes across different cultures and different lineages that are the same. Like one of the themes, for example, that we see a lot with the goddess is the idea of the Immaculate Conception, like a great being born from a virgin mother. That's like, you see that in many different traditions and many different stories. And so whenever I see it, anything like that across different lineages, I think, oh, there's a clue here, there's something here, you know, because it's not just one culture or one school of thought. It's different versions of the same story. Another good one similar to that is the Noah's Ark story. There's lots of different variations of the story of the big boat with all the animals. Anyway, so goddesses that kind of have the similar energy to Kali. So Kali chops off men's heads if they're rude, inappropriate, egomaniacs, patriarchal, etc., etc. Like anything, any men that she doesn't appreciate, she chops off their heads and then sometimes tramples on them afterwards, or like dances in a glory dance on their heads. But I was also reading recently about Aphrodite. No, not Aphrodite. That's from Edwina. Artemis, who some call Diana, which is the Greek goddess. And she had a similar thing. So she had a bow and arrow, and she basically would just shoot with her bow and arrow any man that got in her way. She was particularly fervent around sexual predators. So if any man was a rapist or even spoke about rape or spoke about violating women's bodies, that was it, straight away, just shot with an arrow, dead. And there's this thread of energy around non-tolerance for that which isn't acceptable. And I think this is a much forgotten quality of the goddess. You know, we talk about the goddess as divine feminine, and we talk about the beauty and the nurturing and the gracefulness, and all of those are wonderful qualities. But a very important, powerful quality of the goddess is not tolerating that which is unacceptable, and not tolerating it on behalf of ourselves, and also for our children and for our families and for our society and for our culture. Yeah, really, really powerful. Yeah, Shay, I think Artemis is really the same energy, the archetypal energy, as Kali. I think they're one and the same when you look at the vibration behind the imagery. So yeah, that's something I wanted to share today as well, that it's not all about love and peace. Sometimes it's about like the goddess as a very forceful figure, and a protectress. I'm hoping some of this energy comes through in the US elections. Let's see what happens. But yeah, women standing up for that which is not acceptable. Anything else anyone would like to share before we wrap up today? Right, my hope for this session is that it's one of those sessions that just gives you a little food for thought to then go off and do your own dreaming, journaling, vision boarding, Tarpana, ancestral inquiry practice. Like, I hope this just whets your appetite for a little bit of more of a deep dive into these archetypes and these energies and the role that they play in your own life. And if you have daughters or children, the role that they will play, you know, moving forward through upcoming generations. I will share in our community portal and also in the post itself some photos of my beautiful great Auntie Pat's scrapbook. And if you guys have any other things that you would like to share, Shay, I'd love to see your bottom of the wardrobe sculpture. Maybe you can give us a before and after photo. The goddess definitely shouldn't be in the bottom of the wardrobe, so I'm glad you're going to retrieve her today. And yeah, anything else that anyone else has to share, I'd love for this conversation to carry on inside our community. So if you haven't popped into the community yet, please do, and let's keep sharing. Have a beautiful afternoon, everyone. Namaste. Take care.